So let's continue our look at traditional fielding metrics by reviewing what we've covered so far. The original fielding metrics were games played by defensive players. Putouts that we defined as when a defensive player recorded an out, typically tagging, a flyout, or force out. And strikeouts, assists where a defensive player fields or touches a ball before a putout is made, could be unintentional. Errors. Now, errors are defined as a misplay, and we're going to talk about errors next. Double plays as well when two outs are made on a single play. And then get to a key measure of traditional fielding statistics, which is fielding percentage. And fielding percentage, let's define that right here. Fielding percentage is defined as putouts plus assists divided by putouts plus assists plus errors. So this is a pretty simple formula. Traditional metrics are used here in this formula. One other thing to note is a very common term in fielding analytics is called total chances, abbreviated TC. And total chances is just defined as putouts plus assists plus errors. Let's take a look at the problem with errors. What's wrong with errors? Now, errors are defined in the rule book as misplays as determined by the official score. So an error allows a batter or runner to reach base or continue their at-bat. And this happens in the case of dropped foul pops. If you drop a foul pop that should have been caught, that's going to be called an error by the official scorer. When the play would be made by ordinary effort, and that's the key term here. If the play should have been made with ordinary effort and it's not, that's going to be called the error by the official score. So keep that in mind when you think about errors or watch the game of baseball. Know that the official score is thinking about ordinary effort. But it's based on the human judgment of that official score. There could be biases in any judgment made by the official score when they're determining errors or hits. And you could imagine if you took a room full of official scores and they watched different plays, a lot of plays they'll agree on that was a hit and that was an error. But there's going to be a bunch of plays that are 50-50 calls. The 50-50 play is the one that the official scores always talk about because those are the hard ones to call. Half the room of official scores might call that a hit, and half the room of official scores might call that an error. Now, what was the purpose? Why did they go to all this effort? What was the purpose of defining this rule about errors as determined by the official score? The purpose is twofold. First is to get a better measure of fielding. You wanted to measure fielding skills, fielding talent. So a better measure of fielding was one purpose of determining errors. The second one was to get a better measure of pitching. Back even at the beginning of baseball in the 19th century, analysts and writers in the game wanted to measure pitching skill and fielding skill, but in particular pitching skill. And when there are misplays, when there are errors behind that pitcher, they really shouldn't be counted against a pitcher's skill. So the two purposes of going through all this effort to determine misplays and errors was to get a better measure of fielding and a better measure of pitching. And the other thing to note is that the error determination really was based on the old game, the 19th century and early 20th century game, when there were a lot more misplays going on.